Okay, y'all, you know how I am. I can't resist the opportunity to share a little history with you. It's gonna be kind of put together, not very professional, but I want you to know because the world's largest steam locomotive, the Big Boy 2021 tour, is coming to our neighborhood. Number 4014 is the only Big Boy um, locomotive, steam motive, locomotive in operation. On Wednesday, August the 18th, at County Road 2009 from 11:45 until 12:30. That's over at Hardin where the old depot used to be. That big train's going to be sitting there, but then it's going to fire up and it's going to come through Hull, Texas, right by where our old depot used to be. So I thought I'd tell you just a little bit about what I know about the Beaumont, Sour Lake, and Western Railroad. That railroad company was chartered in 1903, and it's an 85-mile rail from Beaumont to Houston. In 1904, it reached out to Grayburg, and then it was all the way to from Grayburg to Houston by 1907. In 1924, it became Missouri Pacific Railroad. And in 1982, it became Union Pacific, which is what it is today. In Hull, Texas today, it averages 15 trains a day, including the eastbound Sunset Limited. We can hear them coming all through the day and the night. Several years ago, I prepared this poster for Mayhaw Festival. So I'm going to share a little bit of the pictures and maybe a little bit of the information about those pictures with you, just to give you an idea about the Beaumont, Sour Lake, and Western Railroad. This picture gives you just a brief look at where the path of the railroad was. And this one down here, if I can get it all lined up for you, gives you a listing of the towns on the railroad. Now I'm going to see if I can get it straightened up in there just a little bit. And I'm going to read to you perhaps what those little railroad stops were. It started in Beaumont, which was at mile 281, Beaumont. Now remember these mileage figures as we go along. At 282.5, a mile and a half moving west, was Landry. At 285.2 was Elizabeth. At 286.5 was Ziegler. And at 288.2 was Keating. At 289.5 was Meeker. And at 292.7 was Westbury. And at 294.9 was Nora. And at 295.5 was Brazier. And at 290.0 was Grayburg. Now you may have heard of Grayburg before. It's where the Texas New Orleans Railroad had a crossing. that went over to Sour Lake. At 303.4 was Hathaway, and at 304.1 was Bud Connor. Bud Connor was a railroad community, a sawmill community on the railroad that, believe it or not, when they tore it down, they moved the lumber to Hull, and they built First Baptist Church Hull and several boarding houses and even some homes from the material at Bud Connor. 307.7 was Strain. I remember when everyone here, well, lots of folks from here, would grab a nickel and go down and catch the train to Strain. At 313.0 was Hall. At 317.8 was Hardin. And at 321.7 is Sand Dune. It sounds like Mr. Ronnie chose this time to go out and get on the lawnmower, doesn't it? At 326.6 is Kennefic. And at 328.7 is Fullerton. And at 331.2 is Martha. And at 337.1 is Eastgate. At 341.4 is Huffman. And at 342.5 is Bradford. And at 343.9 is Dunks. At 343.3 is Harmaston. At 350.4 is Spencer. At 351.6 is Victor. At 355.0 is Dyersdale. At 358.6 is Setter. I don't know. And at 368.0 is Houston. Could you keep up with all that? What it tells you is there were a lot of stops on the railroad in the 85 miles from Beaumont to Houston on the Beaumont, Sour Lake, and Western Railroad. I have a picture here of the old depot that it was at Hull. And then, let's see, we have an article here that says, if I can read it, maybe you can read it. Since the Beaumont, Sour Lake, and Western Railway has placed passenger service in operation between Houston and Beaumont, Hull, a station on the line situated 14 miles west of Sour Lake, has become quite an active place. Passengers board Batson, get off at Hull and go across the country in hacks, the distance being only about 6 miles, and the fare being $1.50. And then they can go on to Sour Lake. I jiggled it around, didn't I? Quite a bit. I hope it didn't make you sick. And then there's a picture of Mr. Jordan, who was the mailman. And when they came through, they would put the mail out, maybe hang it on a rack as they came through, and Mr. Jordan would gather the mail and deliver it to the post office. On that railway, you may find lumber mills like this one, where they cut the timber, And then you will see down here, there is a thing that shows, a little chart that shows that at the Hull Depot, the line went through, there was the depot in a 100-foot cotton frame platform on either side. And there were rails of 5,056 feet of cars that could park on the side rails. And then we have this picture of one of those hand carts where they went out and hand pumped the cart on the railroad to take workmen out or something like that. Then let's see. Oh, this one is interesting to me because it's at Hardin, where you'll be stopping to see if you go over to Hardin, right there at the depot. That's where they had the cattle loading pens. There wasn't a stop line. You could drive the cattle just all across this big open prairie that existed at that time and go straight to load the cattle at Hardin at those pens. And this last picture is the Doucette Lumber Company. It was right by the railroad. You can see there's a car. And they brought in lumber and gravel and other merchandise for the Doucette Lumber Company and unloaded it right there. When I was a teenager, it was a skating rink. It brought life to this part of the world, the Beaumont, Sour Lake, and Western Railroad. I hope you have an opportunity, if you live in the area, to go down and see the Big Boy come through. Good evening.